Hello everyone. Today we will be talking about phobias. You'll be helping us in a support group. Now, with me up here, I have some of my star patients that I've been working with for a while now. So I will allow them to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Theodore, and I have a fear of bees.
Hello, my name is Taylor, and I have a fear of spiders.
Hello, my name is Nicole, and I have a fear of reptiles.
Hello guys, my name is Maxim and I have a fear of small places.
Hello, my name is Jasmine, and I have
She has a fear of public speaking.
Now, phobias keep people from doing things that they would like to do on like a daily basis, and everyone has some type of phobia that they'll have to deal with in their life. Now, unfortunately, most of them can be cured and they can be managed. Now, the first step to an uncommon, to getting a phobia cured, to overcoming a phobia, involves understanding your phobia. Tonight, we will be introducing the common and uncommon phobias, and our goal is to help everyone understand that just because you have a phobia does not mean that you're crazy. So first, let us start off. What is a phobia? A phobia is an intense but unrealistic fear brought upon by an object or an event or a situation. This is that's often causing people to not be able to socialize, do work, or normal things. Okay. Now, there are three different types of phobias. First one being specific phobia. This is the fear of particular situations or objects. And there's also a social phobia, which is the fear of publicly having the phobia occurring while you're pretty much in public. And then there's the agoraphobia. This is the fear of feeling trapped and having a panic attack. So, now a funny quote by Franklin Roosevelt, like displayed here, is the only thing to fear is fear itself. Now, he isn't telling us to have agoraphobia or social phobia, but what he's actually saying is that what we need to do, or what's causing the fear, is actually the fact that we are thinking the object, the anticipation of the object harming us or causing something to happen. This will not actually, the fear, the actual object will never hurt us, but it's the fear of the object that harms us. Now, phobias will occur in all races. About 18% of Americans are tormented by irrational fears, and that will affect their daily lives. People with phobias will also feel unreasonable, and they can't control it. What's happening?
Environment is more powerful than genetics. Watson designs an experiment for an infant known as Little Albert. He's so confident, he films it for posterity. At first, Albert shows little fear, even when Watson places a burning newspaper in front of him. Albert is also unafraid when he encounters a white rat for the first time in his life. But then, Watson shows Albert the rat accompanied by a loud clanging noise. One of the few things that upsets little Albert. And he does it again. And does it again. Eventually, Albert learns to fear not just the rat, but all furry things, even without the loud noise. In Watson's mind, the Little Albert experiment is a success because it proves that fears are learned, not inherited.
Okay. Thank you. Now, as you can see, it can often be caused by learned behavior. It's not something that you're technically born with. So, most cases, or pretty much all cases, it's something that you learn, whether this is by your parents or a bad event that happens. Now, earlier, Theodore was saying that he has a fear of bees. Does anyone know what a fear of bees is called? Taylor.
The fear of bees is actually called apophobia, and this specific phobia often originates from a negative experience that someone has actually gone through. In Theodore's case, he's never actually been stung by a bee before, but just the fear of feeling that pain and actually being stung by a bee is what causes his phobia. But being stung can lead to having this phobia. You can be socially conditioned as a small child to fear bees, especially with the sound they make. Sometimes it's agitating to little kids, and that just grows up with them throughout their lifetime, and then it becomes an irrational fear as an adult. And with this specific phobia, you can have a rational fear if you're allergic, because if you have an allergic reaction to a bee, you can actually go into anaphylactic shock, and you do need an EpiPen to fix that. So there are certain instances where you can have an irrational fear where I don't want to be stung, but then if you get stung, you can actually get physically harmed. So there is a differentiation between that kind of phobia. With apophobia, certain symptoms can include feeling an uncontrollable anxiety when you even think about bees, or if you're exposed to them. You can almost all the time try as hard as you can to avoid bees. Whether you hear a buzz or you see a nest, you start walking in the opposite direction. And then other things that happen in extreme cases, I've seen a person faint because they were so close to a beehive. Your fight or flight instinct really kicks in because, yeah, you can approach the nest, but oftentimes people just decide to walk away because being stung by a bee is definitely not fun. When I was little, I got stung by bees all the time, but I kind of outgrew that fear. But if it gets so bad, apophobia can actually create an inability to function outside, which can lead to agoraphobia, because you don't want to be in a public place where the possibility of being around bees is actually like a possibility.
Wow, you know a lot about Theodore's. Can you tell us about your own?
Okay. Well, spiders are definitely my biggest fear. It has 8 legs. Personally, I just find that unnatural. They're creepy crawlies, and where I live, there are so many wolf spiders in my house. They're terrifying. You know, I'll wake up and there's one on my ceiling. Not a fun thing to wake up to. In Western regions, 55% of females and 18% of males suffer from arachnophobia, and even within the United States, 54% of the population is scared, and that's ranging just from a minor fear to an actual phobia where it can negatively impact like how you act during the day. Arachnophobia is typically associated with spiders, and that's what I associate it with, but this term can also include scorpions, ticks, mites, and daddy-long-legs. In extreme cases of arachnophobia, which luckily I'm not that bad thanks to Dr. J, he's helped me, people can avoid camping, and they refuse to go abroad, because if you've ever seen a picture of a camel spider, they're about the size of a small dog. Not about that. That's terrifying. People ritually check their bodies and their bedding to see if there's a spider in it. There's a statistic that in your lifetime you'll approximately ingest about 8 spiders, because people who sleep with their mouth open, spiders like dark places, and your mouth just happens to attract that, so that's a nightmare-inducing. And people often, I have a friend who avoids films with spiders just because they can't stand the thought of them, let alone see a giant spider on the screen. It's theorized that this fear in humans of spiders is ingrained from ancestors as a survival technique, because back when they first saw spiders, they were deadly, and we have anti-venom for that now, so it's kind of been part of us for so long that people see it and it's not natural, it's not comforting to us, so we're just naturally afraid. Usually an origins of arachnophobia just comes from a traumatic experience, and one time I was driving and I felt something on my shoulder. I thought it was my hair, I brushed it off, and I looked again, and I saw 4 big eyes staring at me, and it was a brown wolf spider. Luckily, I had the common sense to stop and then shriek in terror, because I can't handle it. It's terrifying to me. My dad said my shrieks of terror probably killed it because I never saw the spider again. So that's just a little bit of an example of how much they're very discomforting to me. But I think that's about enough of that. I can start feeling my skin crawl just talking about it.
Very good. Does anyone know what Nicole's fear was? Maxim.
Oh yeah, I know something about her fear. Actually, I don't know a lot, but I know its name, at least. It's herpetophobia. Herpetophobia is the fear of lizards and everything that crawls on the floor. Basically, the snakes and crocodiles. Herpetophobia victims usually suffer from seeing the lizards going around, and basically it's really common phobia, and people are sweating and have their heartbeat goes up when they see lizards. Basically, this doesn't affect their lives, but they cannot go to the field trips because they are afraid of seeing one lizard. Or sometimes when the lizard goes to the mailbox, they are afraid to open their mailbox and get their envelopes.
Thank you, Maxim. Taylor earlier told the group that Jasmine had a fear of public speaking. Does anyone know what that's called?
Actually, glossophobia is what you call the fear of public speaking, and this originates from the Greek word glosso, which actually means tongue. And so basically, glossophobia is just an extreme case of being tongue-tied, is how I like to think of it. Symptoms of this include stage fright, nausea, avoidance of events that you'd actually have to have individual, one-on-one contact or speaking in front of a group, and this can lead to high levels of anxiety. It's said that about 75% of the population will feel some sort of social anxiety or fear of speaking in front of people in their lifetime. There's an actual organization, it's called Association of Speakers Club, and this is just a group of people that get together with people who have issues speaking publicly, and they help them and just kind of build their confidence and kind of equate the notion of speaking in public with something positive rather than something scary. And actually, I looked it up, and there are a lot of actors and actresses and even singers who have stage fright, and some of these people include Adele, Hayden Panettiere, Megan Fox, and Barbra Streisand.
Thank you for giving us the information. Does anyone know any of the common phobias? Max?
Well, I know a lot of common phobias, but guys, to say shortly, I'm going to tell you about 4 of them. First of the most common phobias is Astraphobia. Astraphobia, as you can say from its name, it has to do with the stars, because Astra means a star from Greek. But there is a trick. It has not only to do with the stars, but with the space itself. When people see the space during the night or see the stars, they got anxiety. They are sweaty and they feel their heartbeat goes up. So this phobia is victims of this phobia cannot hang out with their friends at night or during the evenings. The most common example of this phobia is shown in the movie Gravity. So most of you guys, I think, saw it. I hope so. But in that movie, people who are victimized by Astraphobia can be shown because the main actress is flowing around the empty space for the whole period of the time of the movie. So people can understand what Astraphobia is and what Astrophobian guys feel about it. The next phobia I want to tell you about is an autophobia. Autophobia from Greek means a fear of selfness, or a fear of being left by yourself, the fear of loneliness. Guys who suffer from the autophobia are usually traumatized by some event during their lifetime, and because of that they are afraid of being lonely. The interesting thing about this is that they are not only afraid of being alone, but they are afraid of being disturbed by other people and sudden noises, which is strange because they are afraid of being lonely. But who knows? This phobia can be cured only by psychological means. You cannot cure this phobia by pills because it will only reduce the symptoms. Although people who suffer from autophobia fully understand there is nothing to fear about and being lonely, they still do. The other phobia that I want to talk to you about is metastatic phobia. Metastatic phobia has nothing to do with statistic things. It has to do with dynamics. Is the phobia the fear of changes? But changes are everywhere in our world. So how do people with metastatic phobia deal with it? Usually they just live in the same place, use the same place, use the same food, use the same friends. They're not making any friends because they're socially awkward or something. They just don't want to change their friend list and add some people there. This phobia is usually caused by trauma too, and it's the trauma of losing something or someone significant in your lifetime. It's hard to cure this phobia because usually when you have to cure something, you go to the doctor, and these people don't want to go to the doctor because they're afraid of changing their lives, and going to the doctor means that they are going to change it. The other phobia that I want to talk to you about is most understandable one and the most common one, I guess, because it's throughout the whole world, and the Yaf is afraid of the dark. Everyone afraid of the dark. But no, not all of you guys know the name for this phobia. It's called Arachnophobia. Nyctophobia is the fear of darkness, and you can interpret it as in a philosophical way, like the fear of unknown, and in a casual way, the fear of being blinded by the darkness. Usually that phobia comes out when the child is scared by some kind of monster or the ghost under the bed, which is hiding there and is waiting for the child to move from the bed. But this phobia can be cured because people can manipulate with the dark, and basically doctor can show to anyone that there is nothing to be afraid of the dark because he can just turn off the light and show it to you. But to cure yourself fully, you have to rationalize your fear and understand there is nothing to fear about it.
Thank you. That was very good. Now, that was just a few of the common ones, but let's move on. Does anyone know any of the any uncommon phobias? Thank you. Please share.
One of my favorite phobias, not necessarily favorite, but one of my favorite to say, is hexaconta-hexaphobia, which is the fear of the number 666. This originated from the biblical verse Revelation 13:18, and it indicates 666 as the number of the beast, which is the symbol of the devil. A few examples of this fear: Nancy and Ronald Reagan actually changed their street address from 666 St. Cloud Road to 668, just because they felt it was a superstition and they didn't want to be associated with that number. Another, in the year 2006, there was an increasing number of women who feared having their child born on June 6, 2006, just because they didn't want their child to have that birthday. And a Dutch Christian organization called Revival Foundation, they skipped the 666 song in their songbook just because they didn't want that to be in just their context of songs. And another example, the Highway 666 was nicknamed the Devil's Highway because it was proven that it actually was a dangerous road, and the name was changed and statistics actually dropped. So this phobia is very psychological because most people think that you can't be afraid of a number, but just thinking psychologically and just knowing the indication of what it symbolizes oftentimes just elicits fear. This fear can cause obsessive behaviors, such as if your total at the store comes out to 666, you might be wanting to buy another item just so you don't have that total, or you're driving and you have to drive another mile because your odometer says 666 and you just can't have it on there. There's also, I've actually had a friend who blocked channel 666 on her TV just because she didn't want to be associated with it at all. And then this next phobia, it's Arachnophobia, and it's the fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth. I researched, and it actually is a real phobia. It's often related to the feeling of choking or just the texture of like sticky foods or anything just with that texture. Symptoms of this phobia specifically is breathlessness, dry mouth, anxiety attacks, nausea, and even a fear of dying, just because since it is so closely related with that feeling of choking, people just automatically associate that texture and that just feel of peanut butter in your mouth with dying. It's technically an irrational fear because I'm guessing no one in this room is afraid of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth, and it's not necessarily that common. I've never met anyone with that certain phobia. Online, they said to seek mental health professionals if you have this phobia. The PCA, which is the Peanut Corporation of America, will actually donate to your cause if you have this phobia and will help you find treatment for it. And it's actually just a little bit ironic because 2 years ago, I think, PCA recalled a lot of their peanut products because it was riddled with salmonella. So I can kind of see how some people could have that phobia now. This next one is Hippopotamonstrosis quipideliophobia, which is, ironically, the fear of long words. This is actually just an extension of the legitimate name of the phobia, which is sesquipedeliophobia, because the origin of that word is sesquipedalian, which is someone who uses long words. They added the hippopotamonstros part because monstros, monster, and hippopotamus, large animal, and it's just even more syllables to attach to this to kind of maybe be a little bit cruel to someone who has this phobia. This 35-letter word is often said jokingly, you know, because, one, it's fun to say if you ever wanted to try and say it. It took me a little bit of practice to be able to say it so fluently, but people who fear long words tend to fear the complexity of them and multisyllabic words. And although it's rare, someone with this phobia could have anxiety. They can lead to isolation and depression because they're afraid to talk to people and fear of talking with large words or a large vocabulary. And they avoid just being in social places because they just don't want to come into contact with those words. They often limit their speaking and writing vocabulary, and they can mentally lock up if they're confronted with a long word. Some related phobias to this are bibliophobia, which is the fear of books, mythophobia, fear of legends, and metrophobia, which is a fear of poetry. And although this phobia is fairly rare, everyone could have a mild form of this, even if it's just a fear. Because if you saw this and a teacher was like, try and say this word, your first reaction is going to be like, I can't say that. So everyone kind of has that anxiety towards trying to say a word such as this, 35 letters, and actually, you know, mess up, say it. And then there's that embarrassment factor that you can think of. And just to enforce this a little.
I've been afraid of big words since I was a kid. I thought that I'd get over it, somehow I never did. Usually it's no big deal, but every now and then you're audaciously loquacious. It kicks in again. I went to a specialist and said, what's wrong with me? Based upon your test results, it's not hard to see. You're afraid of lengthy words, you're not the only one. Here's what your condition's called, but this won't be much fun. Hippopotamonstrosis quipideliophobia. Hippopotamonstrosis quipideliophobia. If you're afraid of big long words, here's one you should know. Hippopotamonstrosis quipideliophobia.
Just to enforce that just a little bit. This next one, porphyrophobia, is actually the fear of the color purple. I didn't necessarily know you could be afraid of a color, but I have a friend who has 2 small kids. She refused to watch Barney with them because she thought it was unnatural that the dinosaur was purple. And I didn't necessarily understand, but I mean, Barney is just a little bit creepy, I think, so I can kind of see how, you know, a purple dinosaur who sings and dances can maybe be a little discomforting. Symptoms of porphyrophobia, or fear of the color purple, is the urge to flee at anything purple. Kind of ironic that I'm wearing a purple shirt today. Panic attacks, you can tremble, and you have heart palpitations, shortness of breath, and it can often cause embarrassment because who wants to admit that they're afraid of a color? You should probably seek help from a professional if you have this, and oftentimes anti-anxiety medication is prescribed just because with the medication and hopefully therapy you can get to the root of your problem. Like, there was a case study done, or not a case study, there was actually a situation where a daughter was being abused by her mom. She was schizophrenic and was just abusing her, and she locked her in a crate. And all she had was a purple crayon, and that's all she had. And once she was saved and she was kind of rehabilitated, she couldn't see anything purple. She couldn't deal with anything. If they gave her a purple crayon, she'd start crying just because of that traumatic experience led her to associate that color with just terror. So it is an actual phobia. It's just not necessarily seen very much. And this last uncommon phobia is penthrophobia. This is actually the fear of your mother-in-law. Now, it is classified as irrational, but some people probably have good reason to be afraid, I would think, maybe. Symptoms are feelings of dread. They all have similar symptoms to other phobias, such as anxiety, not wanting to talk to them. But you can also induce emotional responses and symptoms, such as rage, fear, crying, knowing that you're going to be in their presence, and even headaches, just because of the stress of being around them or being associated with them. People with this phobia often have fears of their stepfather, their mothers, their father-in-law, basically anyone who isn't in your immediate family. And here's a perfect example of maybe why you might want to reconsider being scared.
In this, congratulations, I'm so happy for you. Yeah.
Well done. I'm very impressed by both of your knowledge. Now, if you feel trapped or alone because of your phobia, you should try to get professional help. That's the nicest I can say that. Now, psychotherapy is one way that you can try to get help. It's pretty much when one talks to a professional about their phobias. Now, there's actually two types of psychotherapy. One being desensitization or exposure therapy. Now, this is whenever you focus on changing a response to an object or situation, and gradual repeated exposure will cause you to eventually learn to conquer your phobia and anxiety. And one common tool used by doctors is a fear ladder. And I actually have an example which my STAR patients have helped me. As you can see here, the first thing that I would do is, if someone has a fear of dogs, is I'd get a bunch of pictures of dogs, and I'll have them look at the pictures of dogs. Afterwards, once they get comfortable with that, I would have them watch a video with a dog in it. Once they get comfortable of watching all these videos with dogs, whether it's like running or walking a dog, or just a video, I would eventually get them to look through a window at a dog. I would eventually take them onto the road, and they'll stand 10 feet away from the dog. And eventually shorten that to 5 feet. And then I'd get them to stand beside the dog on a leash. And they'll eventually start petting a small dog that someone's holding, and we'll move it up to a larger dog, which is on the leash, and then we'll move it to a larger dog off a leash. Now, my patients have helped me make a video.
Hey, Max. Move it. Hey, Max. How are you since I showed you the picture? You are? That's good. I'm really sorry about that. But
It's okay, bro. No problem.
well, just to make it up to you, I'm going to show you. I think it'll make you feel better.
Oh. So, it's need to feel better, right?
Yep. Well, here it is. Why? Why are you doing this? They're just puppies, Max. They're just puppies.
I'm really sorry about the picture and the video.
Yeah, well, I was surprised for you. I want to show you something.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so come with me. Okay, you're gonna love it so much, I promise. Okay, now kneel down.
Okay.
Here you go. Ready?
Yeah.
Ah! That's me!
This dog represents 40 years of being in pain. Can you tell him when to stop? I'm gonna let you talk, okay? Your family.
You ready? You ready to pet this dog, okay? This dog's your friend. Ready? Go! 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 Yes! Yes! Oh, get out! Get out! Get out!
Now, we were making a slight joke, and we made it funny, but it is extremely painful for those who are trying to go through it, and we take the steps slowly to make sure that they get used to it step by step, and they can, and it's very effective. Now, the other form of psychotherapy is cognitive behavioral therapy, which involves exposure combined with other techniques to learn the ways to view and cope with the feared objects, so that they have a different reaction. The patient will learn alternate beliefs about their objects that they fear, and it'll change the impact. This makes the patient challenge their original negative thoughts of said object or event. Now, the other idea is medication. Now, this is a challenging one because, like any medication, it's always dangerous. You need to be careful with overdosing, and it can easily go wrong. Now, there's one style which is the beta blockers. Now, this works by blocking the stimulated effects of adrenaline, such as blood pressure, heart pounding, shaking voice, and limbs shaking voice and limbs which are caused by anxiety. Other medication can be stuff like antidepressants. Now, antidepressants are a neurotransmitter that act on neurotransmitters in your brain that cause are believed